Hello everyone. Today we will cover the unit 3, that is sampling and sampling designs and data collection. In this session we will cover the part A, that is sampling and sampling designs. The topics which will be covered are census and sample surveys, probability and non-probability sampling. Census surveys. What are census surveys? See, for any study, for any research study, there is always a need for data to be collected. Now, when this data is to be collected as per the topic under study, we have two options, whether we cover each and every unit of the population or we cover only a part of the population. So, we have two options, that is census survey and sample survey. Census survey represents the terms called complete enumeration surveys. A complete examination of each and every element of the population is called census or complete enumeration survey. In this survey, all the items in the field of inquiry constitute the universe or population. It requires a great deal of time, money, and energy. When the field of study is large, it is difficult to use census survey. And this survey is very useful when population is small and very detailed information is a must. Where are these census surveys used? When the government of India wants to conduct the collection of data regarding the population of India, then they conduct through the complete enumeration survey, because you cannot deduce about the whole from a part of the population. In this case, the representatives of the government visit each and every household and collect the information. But it is a very time consuming exercise, so the census or the population census is collected every 10 years, as we all know. Apart from the census, there is a second method of identifying the units, that is known as the sample survey. Sample survey refers to when data from only a portion of the population is considered. All the units of the population are covered in the census, where only a few representatives are covered in the sample. When is this sample survey useful? When number of units in the population is very large and time is very less. Now, coming to the next term, that is known as what is sampling. When you want to resort to the sample survey, you need to collect the sample from the methods of sampling. So, what is sampling? Sampling refers to the process of selecting an adequate number of elements from the part of population, studying it, and thereby drawing conclusions about the whole. The purpose of sampling is to gain as much information possible by observing only a small portion. Then, question arises, how to collect this sample? It should be very much representative of the population. If you look into this figure, we see that the entire circle represents a population, and out of this, when we draw a small part of it, this is known as a sample. For the census, this population is denoted by capital N, whereas sample is denoted by small n. Census surveys are not always feasible because they are costly and time consuming. So, sampling is a very important thing. When it is impossible or too expensive, we go for sampling. So, how is sampling important? It is important because it saves time and money, and sometimes you cannot wait till whole data is collected. It is the best option when destruction of units is involved. Suppose sometimes we are conducting a quality check of glass items and we want to ensure that quality is good. Suppose we try to take each and every item, and while handling there may be damages. That time only sampling is good. Let us see some examples when in our day-to-day life there the use of sampling is done. All of us know that when we want to confirm whether rice is cooked in the vessel or not, then we only check a few grains of rice. Even 1 grain of rice is sufficient to tell whether the entire rice is cooked or not. This is nothing but sampling, but we never realize that we are using sampling. Secondly, sometimes when we are not well and we go to the doctor and the doctor suspects that you are suffering from some infection, then he suggests you go for the blood test, which they will employ that samples of blood to be collected. Now, why do we take a sample of blood? Because we all know that in our whole body, the same blood is flowing throughout the body. So, even a small 5 ml, 2 ml, 1 ml of blood sample is sufficient to study and infer about the whole what you are suffering from. Why we don't take that? You take a sample from the hand, you take a sample from the leg, because all of them are same. Thirdly, a simple example is, suppose we are preparing any tea, coffee, or cold drink, or something like that. Again, we want to confirm whether it is tasting properly or not. We just take a spoonful and talk about the whole. This is nothing but sampling. While buying a novel or a book, how do we try to decide whether we want to buy it or not? We just flip through the pages. While flipping through the pages, when we like the content, when we like the language of one or two pages or just one or two paragraphs, we want to buy the book. This is nothing but applying sampling for collecting or for conferring about the whole. Now we will see some of the concepts used in sampling. Very important one is the population. The term population refers to the group of people or objects which form the units under study. Suppose we are studying a group of individuals, employees of an organization. So all the employees of the organization will be forming the population. This population may be finite or infinite. Generally, population is denoted by capital N. What is an element? Element comprises of the single member of the population. So, population is the totality of all the elements. Now, when we want to do sampling, then we need to have the list of all the units of the population. If population is finite, then it is possible to have the list, and this list is known as sampling frame. Some examples of population. All the Indian universities in the year 2010 to 2018. All executives of BSNL in 2018. We can actually find a list. All skilled workers in an industry. All executives of IT companies. Like this, we can have so many different examples of population. Coming to the sampling concepts. First of all, what is a sample? Sample is nothing but subset of the population. It comprises of only some elements of the population. Sample size is denoted by small n. Sampling unit is the single member of the sample. Just as element is the unit of the population, sampling unit is the unit of the sample. Coming to parameter, when we have some topic under study, then we will have to measure some characteristics. So whatever characteristics we are measuring for the population, that is known as parameter, and whatever characteristic we are measuring for the sample is known as statistic. So remember, population, parameter, sample, statistic. So we test the equality of sample statistics with the population parameter and then use it for generalization of observations. Sampling errors and precision. When we are having a large population and we are only taking a part of the population, there is always a chance of error occurring. When you have got say 100 individuals and you are taking only 10 of them, so when you take 10, then of course you are trying to uh, talk about only 10 people, you may make some errors. These errors are known as sampling errors. So for this, it is important to know all the sampling methods and use the appropriate sampling technique. When the population is homogeneous, then less is the sampling error. And how to calculate sampling error? Sampling error is critical value at alpha multiplied by the standard error. Precision is the accuracy. Next we come to what is the sample design. Now, sample design refers to the plan for obtaining the sample from the population. Remember, we have a large number of units. If I have 100 units, I want to select 10. How to select that entire plan, we will call it as a sample design. And we have some techniques used for collecting that. So, how to choose it? A good sample design should give a representative sample, it should have a small sampling error, and it should be very economical. Then only we will say that you have a good sampling design. Now, there are two types of sampling. One is probability sampling, second is non-probability sampling. Now, how this is classified? It is based on the probability attached to the elements in the population while selecting a representative sample. Let us see what is probability sampling. Probability sampling is used when you know the list of all the people in the population. When you have the proper sampling frame, then only you can use probability sampling. Now there are four different types of sampling, probability samplings: simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified and cluster. One more thing to remember is in probability sampling, each and every unit of the population, each and every unit of the population has equal chance of being selected in the sample. In non-probability sampling, there is no probability or chance associated with the selection of the units. Non-probability sampling, we don't have any known chance. Four methods are there: convenience, judgment, snowball and quota sampling. Just a look at all the sampling methods at a glance. You have sampling techniques: probability sampling, non-probability sampling. First one is simple random sampling, stratified, cluster, systematic. Then in non-probability you have convenience, quota, judgment and snowball. Let us see one by one all the 8 techniques of sampling. How to choose the appropriate sampling technique is also very important. While choosing the sampling technique, you have to consider what is the size of population. If the size of population is small, you need not go for sampling. Secondly, you have to see the how the population is distributed. What is the composition of the population? Then you should see the purpose of study. Why you are conducting the study? How much accuracy is needed? How much details are needed? That will give you. Then availability of budget provisions. Now let us see what is simple random sampling. In simple random sampling, each and every unit has equal chance or probability of being included in the sample. This is the simplest method of sampling. One example, as we are always talking, is suppose you have a class of 60 students. I want to select any 10 out of them. If I have to select 10 out of 60, what is the choice available before me? I can take the names of all the 60 students, write them on a chit, put it in a box, shake it up, and choose the any 10 at random. This is nothing but the lottery method. So population units are identified, numbered tickets and coins and shuffled properly, and whatever you select, the required number. But when 60 people are there, it is easy to make a chit or write a coins or whatever. But when there are more than 60, say 100 people, 1000 people, then selection of sample will be difficult through lottery method. That time we can use the random number tables, assign some number to each and every population unit, refer to the random number table. Suppose you get 053, then you choose the 53 number and that is your sample. Like that you can go on till you get 10 numbers. Coming to the next, that is stratified sampling. What happens in stratified sampling? Suppose you look at your population and you try to select a sample and then they turn out to be people of the same type and which are not representative of the population. Then whatever you study, whatever inferences you make, that will be not correct. In this case, when you see the population is showing some different types of elements which can be grouped together, Then we use the stratified sampling. In this sampling, population is divided into different strata having similar characteristics, and then the required sample is selected. This sampling improves accuracy and representativeness of the sample. It reduces the sampling bias or sampling error. And what is required? Naturally, you need appropriate knowledge about the population characteristics. Next, we come to the systematic sampling. In systematic sampling, sample is selected by arranging the n population units in some order and then selecting every kth unit till sample is reached. This is very easy to administer. It may lead to bias if patterns are there. One example for this, suppose we have 40 employees in an organization. We want to select 10 out of them. What we should do is just arrange those 40 employees in some order, maybe according to their employee numbers or according to their names. And then 40 divided by 10, you get 4. So select every fourth unit. So you select employee with the number 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 26, 42, 46 and 48 till you get your sample which you require. Cluster sampling. In cluster sampling, population is divided into groups or clusters. Each cluster is similar to the population. Then, as per the sample size required, you select one of the clusters. Then in the second stage, you select the number of units required. Cluster sampling is very useful when the geographical area is very large or you're not able to concisely deal with the population units. So you just divide, say in a whole town, we divide the town into north, south, east, west, and then from each we take something, or we divide the entire city as per their pin code numbers, and then from one of them, two of them, we try to select. Here, each cluster is similar to the population. Now, coming to the non-probability sampling techniques. The first one, in non-probability sampling, as we know, there is no fixed probability associated with the selection of the sample. Secondly, in many studies, you are not having access to all the list of the population units. Suppose we want to study employees in an organization. We have the list of the employees. We can get the listing. But suppose you're trying to find out the users of a particular brand of toothpaste. You cannot have the list of all those users. They are all scattered everywhere. In such a case, we should be using the non-probability sampling. Also, in the general social science studies, that time we use most of the non-probability sampling methods. This is a very easy method, convenience sampling. In this, the participants are selected based on availability and willingness to participate. Now, convenience sampling means the researcher chooses the sample units as per his convenience, as per his own thinking. He steps out, suppose a news reporter, he steps out, or news reporter is going to cover an accident or something. There he will go and he will try to get the views of people on the site, and whatever views he gets, that becomes his convenience sampling. This type of sampling is also known as accidental sampling. Why accidental sampling? Because it is an unplanned sample. Suppose a new movie is released. When a new movie is released, what happens that people are waiting to know reviews from the others. So sometimes you see outside the theater where the movie is being screened, there the people are there, news people, and they will immediately approach the audience when they come out, and they will ask, how did you find the actor, how did you find the plot, etc. So this is nothing but they are trying to collect information, but the sample is being provided accidentally. There is no planned sample. Next type of sampling is quota sampling. This type of sampling is useful in market research. So when you are fixing the type of respondents right in the beginning, that time it is known as quota sampling. This is done to ensure that enough representativeness is seen in the sample. For example, if one wants to study the consumer preferences for a product, the researcher may decide to contact 10 males and 10 females as respondents. So here they are using the quota sampling. Coming to the next is judgment or purposive sample. Sometimes the topic under study is such that the researcher himself uses his own judgment to select the respondents. Suppose he is studying the students of 5th class, students of a school, then he will choose the schools as per his own judgment or as per the other experts' opinion. But in this type of sampling, bias chances are high. It is also very easy to use, it is very cost effective. But expertise of the researcher is very, very important. Now, coming to the last type of sampling, that is snowball sampling. Sometimes the studies are involving such that you do not know where the sample units are located. You don't know who is your respondent directly. You know what you want to study, but you don't know how to access the respondents. So, snowball sampling is particularly useful in social sciences. One sample unit leads to another, and sample size is built up like a snowball that increases with the addition of snow. Suppose we are having the users of a niche product. So one user will lead to the other. Suppose we want to study the culture of some person or some international person, maybe a person from Russia, France, or somewhere. That time we may not know all the people who are present in your city from that particular country. You find out one person, you take his responses, and then you ask him whether he knows